Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members, the Governor of the great state of Wisconsin, the Honorable Scott Walker.
All right, come on, settle down, kids. It's my honor to introduce the Governor of the state of Wisconsin, Scott Walker.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Speaker Fitzgerald, Speaker Pro Tem Kramer, President Ellis, Majority Leader Fitzgerald, Minority Leader Miller, Minority Leader Barca, members of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, constitutional officers, tribal leaders, members of the cabinet, distinguished guests, members of the legislature, my wife and our family, Tonette Walker and part of our family here. And most importantly, fellow citizens of the great state of Wisconsin, it is an honor to appear before you tonight. Next to my wife is the Adjutant General of Wisconsin, Major General Don Dunbar. I want to thank him and the more than 10,000 strong members of the Wisconsin National Guard. And tonight with him are the members of the 724th Engineer Battalion. Stand up, gentlemen. I first spoke with them more than a year ago when they were deployed in Iraq. I greeted them in the cold when they returned home, and I saw many of them again this summer as they responded to the massive damage caused by storms in northwestern Wisconsin. Their dedication to their country, to their state, and yes, to their communities is a prime example of what we all know as the spirit of Wisconsin. We thank them and all of the other men and women in uniform who have served both past and present for their service. Thank you, gentlemen. Before we begin our conversation, let us take a moment to remember a member of our state government family who's not with us here tonight. Representative Tamara Grigsby is fighting a brave battle. Like so many of you, Tonette and I continue to send our thoughts and our prayers to Representative Grigsby and to her family. And I know we all look forward to seeing her in this chamber again soon. Tonight, we come together to discuss the state of our state. To do so, we need to remember where we were as a state prior to a year ago, what we've accomplished over the past year, and most importantly, where we are headed in the year to come. When I addressed you in this chamber last January, Wisconsin had suffered through 3 years of 150,000 of our fellow citizens losing their jobs. The unemployment rate was 7.5%. And after years of tax increases and budget tricks, Wisconsin faced one of the largest budget deficits in the country. Now our unemployment rate is down from a year ago. In fact, it's the lowest it's been since 2008. We're turning things around. We're heading in the right direction. During the past year, we added thousands of new jobs, and we balanced the state budget. We balanced it without raising taxes, without massive layoffs, and without budget tricks, all of which allowed us to put more than $1.2 billion of new state money into Medicaid programs like Badger Care and Family Care. Tonight, I want to share with you how we got here, and more importantly, I want to share our plan for helping the people of Wisconsin create more jobs, keep a balanced budget, and improve the education of our kids by working together. When I ran for governor, I talked a great deal about the core principles I call brown bag common sense. Now, one of those principles is that people create jobs, not the government. In the past, however, some thought that the government did create jobs, and that's how they justified raising taxes to pay for the unsustainable expansion of government. That thinking might explain why, prior to my taking office, we lost some 150,000 private sector jobs. In contrast, I believe that it is the people of the state who create jobs and not the government. With that in mind, I set out to improve the climate for small businesses in Wisconsin. Last year, we passed some of the most aggressive pro-jobs legislation in the country. And we did it with help from lawmakers in both political parties. Because these aren't Republican or Democrat jobs, they're Wisconsin jobs. Tonight, I'm happy to report that after 3 years of losing 150,000 jobs, Wisconsin actually added thousands of new jobs in 2011. Business formations are up by over 2%, and our unemployment rate is down from a year ago. In fact, Wisconsin's unemployment rate is not only lower than the national average, it's actually much better than our neighbors to the south in Illinois. Most importantly, we improved the climate for job creators here in Wisconsin over the past year. Today, 94% of our job creators believe that Wisconsin is headed in the right direction. That compares to just 10% who thought the same thing 2 years ago. And a majority of those employers say they're going to grow in 2012. They'll join companies like Rude Lighting in Sturtevant, or Uline in Hudson, Collaborative Consulting in Wausau, or Shopko in Green Bay, Generac in Whitewater, or City Brewing in La Crosse, all of whom announced new jobs during the past year. They'll join Kestrel Aircraft in Superior. I was there just a few weeks ago when they announced that they're adding 600 new jobs. The mayor... In fact, Senator Jauch and Representative Milroy know this was a great team effort. And in fact, the mayor said that day to us that it was the largest jobs project in the region since World War II. But the inspiring stories don't come just from company owners or plant managers. They come from employees. Sandy Breath, who's with us here tonight, Sandy is one of those people who has one of those great stories. When the economy took a dive a few years ago, she took a pay cut. Not long after that, she lost her job. But today, however, she's working at G3 Industries in Mosinee. G3 is one of those companies that added jobs in the past year and now has plans to add even more in the future. Now, the owner told me that he's creating more jobs in Wisconsin because he likes the way we are moving our state forward. That's important to remember because without the positive changes, he told me he would not have had the confidence to grow his business here. You see, improving the business climate in this state is not only good for business owners, it's good for people like Sandy and her family. We need more stories like Sandy's in Wisconsin. So our Lieutenant Governor and I held small business roundtables all over the state, from La Crosse to Green Bay, from Superior to Racine, from Milwaukee to Eau Claire, from Madison to Wausau. We listened. In particular, we heard many small business owners say that they have jobs, but they cannot find enough skilled workers to fill them. This is a problem that must be solved. With this in mind, we introduced our Wisconsin Working Jobs Plan. In it, we doubled the number of job fairs, add staff to connect people to employment, make it easier for job seekers to get the needed skills, and we prepare to do more to promote manufacturing. In addition, we are specifically targeting our veterans for full employment. It is unacceptable. I think you'll agree with me on this. It is unacceptable to think that any man or woman who has served our country would return home and not be able to find a job. I've made the full employment of our returning veterans a #1 priority of the state's Department of Veterans Affairs. You see, focusing on veterans is good for employers like Monarch Company in Milwaukee, who's looking to add machinists and welders. After a recent visit there, they told me they understand the benefits of employing veterans. Our returning service members are good hires because they're well-disciplined. And on top of that, they can get their training paid for through the Wisconsin GI Bill that we fully restored last year. To create more jobs, employers told us they also need help cutting through the red tape of government. Tonight, I'm announcing new members to the Small Business Regulatory Review Board, which has the authority to review every rule in all of our state agencies. I'll direct our agencies to work with them to remove antiquated and unnecessary regulations that pose a threat to creating new jobs. And employers also told us that they need a 21st century infrastructure system to drive economic development. After the previous administration raided more than $1 billion out of the state transportation fund, I took action to restore our commitment to good roads, freight rail, and strong ports. We know that a strong transportation system helps manufacturers and farmers get product to and from market, and it keeps good people on the job building that infrastructure. There is another tremendous opportunity for job growth in this state. We can pass legislation that will streamline the process for safe and environmentally sound mining. The proposed project in northwestern Wisconsin could provide as many as at least 700 jobs at the mine and thousands across the state. Now, I mentioned this idea several times during the campaign, and we've all debated this for months. Now it is time for us to move forward on a project. It's not only about jobs, but also about the history of our Badger State. Our heritage in Wisconsin is also built on fiscal restraint. You see, one of the most important parts of our state constitution affirms that frugality in government leads to freedom and prosperity for our people. That's worth repeating. Frugality in government leads to freedom and prosperity for our people. I believe our founders had it right. Think about it. When I spoke here last January, Wisconsin faced a $3.6 billion deficit. Now, in the past, state government took more than $1 billion away from building safe roads and bridges, illegally raided the fund to support malpractice victims, and ignored a payment to Minnesota for tax reciprocity. And on top of that, one-time federal stimulus money was used for ongoing cost. All these practices left us with a more than $3 billion hole to fill last year. While these poor decisions of the past left us with a major budget deficit, Wisconsin was not alone. Nearly every state in America faced a budget deficit in 2011. So what did other states do? Well, some, like Illinois, raised taxes, but that only made matters worse. Other states used massive layoffs to balance their budgets. We avoided that in Wisconsin. Some states cut core services like Medicaid, but in Wisconsin, we added some $1.2 billion to Medicaid, and our reforms allowed us to expand family care, our long-term care program for seniors all across the state. Now, still other states opted to use budget tricks. But you know what? I didn't want to pass that burden on to my sons and their generation. I want our kids and our grandkids to grow up in a Wisconsin that is at least as great as the one we inherited. With that in mind, we balanced a $3.6 billion budget deficit with long-term structural reforms. We thought more about the next generation than we did about the next election. And isn't that what you elected us to do? We kept our promises. It's why our ranking as a good place to create jobs actually went up faster than any state in the country last year. We went from years of being ranked in the bottom 10 to breaking into the top half of states to do business and hire people in, because employers appreciate that we took our fiscal problems seriously and we addressed them with real solutions. Another important pledge I made was to not raise your taxes. That's even more important in a tough economy. Now, many of us believe that the $3 billion tax increase imposed a few years ago actually led to the massive job losses through 2010. In contrast, we enacted a budget in 2011 that lowered the overall tax burden in Wisconsin. For the 5 years prior to last year, the average school tax levy increased $220 million per year. Our reforms led to the first decrease in the school property tax levy in 6 years. The total school tax levy actually went down by more than $47 million. That means real money in the hands of real people. People like Pam Petrie of Rice Lake. Mrs. Petrie saw her property tax bill go down by more than $100 this year. I had a great time talking to her on the phone earlier today. She was absolutely thrilled with this. We're thinking about people like Gail Griswold of West Salem, who was surprised to see her property tax bill go down too. In fact, we heard about that from a friend she plays bridge with. Now, our reforms help protect property taxpayers like Mrs. Petrie and Mrs. Griswold and thousands of others like them all across the state. Still, there is more to be done to protect the taxpayers of Wisconsin. Last year, I appointed the Bipartisan Commission on Waste, Fraud, and Abuse. The members of that panel turned in their final report earlier this month, and in it, they identified over $400 million in savings for the taxpayers. We've already implemented some of the recommendations from this report, and to date, these reforms have saved taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. That's a great start. But identifying waste isn't enough. We need to eliminate it. To that end, I'm announcing the Waste, Fraud, and Abuse Elimination Task Force, charged with the responsibility to follow through on that report. Because I respect the hardworking people of Wisconsin, I will continue to be a good steward of the taxpayers' dollar. Eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse is a top priority of my administration. Now, just as important as saving money, our reforms help government work well in places where it does have a legitimate role, like education. As governor, I travel the state and see great schools all the time. And as the father of 2 sons who go to a public school here in Wisconsin, I'm reminded of that importance each and every day. I want to ensure that our schools, and I want to improve our schools and ensure that every kid, no matter what zip code they come from, every kid has access to a great education. Fortunately, we can have great schools and protect taxpayers at the same time. We just have to spend our money more wisely. For example, before our reforms, school districts often had to buy their health insurance from just one company, which cost them millions of dollars. Now they can bid it out, and that is saving school districts millions of dollars across the state. For example, places like the Heartland Lakeside School District saved nearly $700,000 just by switching insurance providers. In Menominee Falls, they saved more than $2.4 million, and in North Fond du Lac, they were able to keep the same provider, but saved in the process over $300,000. That's money that can go directly into the classroom. Here's another example. A few years ago, long before I was governor, a young woman was named the Outstanding Initial Educator by the Wisconsin Council of Teachers of English. Not long after she received the award, she was laid off. Why? Well, under the old collective bargaining system, she was one of the first to be laid off because she was one of the last ones to be hired. It didn't matter that she was one of the best teachers in the state. To correct problems like that, our reforms now allow local school districts to staff based on merit and pay based on performance. Now think about that. That means we can put our best and our brightest in our classrooms, and we can keep them there. Two years ago, I spoke to the convention of school board members and administrators and laid out my plan. As a candidate for governor, I told them the system needed to be reformed and that we should empower local officials who are elected at the local level to make the decisions about their schools. And that's exactly what our reforms do. The best reminder of that came from the words of a superintendent of a small school district who said to me, "Now I get to go back to my office and focus on curriculum instead of on grievances." That's exactly what all this hard work is for, to allow our schools, as well as our state and local governments, to work better for the people we serve. Tonight, I want to thank the many teachers and public servants from across the state of Wisconsin. We appreciate your hard work and your dedication to serving the public. We're glad that Wisconsin avoided the massive layoffs of government employees experienced in other states. Now, looking ahead, there is much more to be done to improve our education system. No skill is as fundamental to student achievement as the ability to read. Something profound happens when a student passes from 3rd grade to 4th grade. You see, from kindergarten through 3rd grade, students spend the bulk of their time learning to read. But by 4th grade, our kids must be equipped with proficient reading skills so they're no longer learning to read, but reading to learn. That's why I was pleased to join with State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Evers, to put together a Read to Lead task force, which was a diverse group of educators, reading specialists, parents, and others from across the state to create a plan for improving the reading skills of our students. In addition to thanking Dr. Evers, I also want to commend Senator Luther Olson, Representative Steve Costell, and Representative Jason Fields, as well as each of the other task force members for working together on Read to Lead. You see, Wisconsin used to lead the nation as one of the top-ranked states in 4th grade reading assessment. But by the time I took office, we had sunk to the middle of the pack. We can all agree that we can and should do better. As a part of our Read to Lead plan, we propose swift action to get our students back on top when it comes to reading. We will fund screeners to assess every child entering kindergarten so that our teachers know the reading levels of each of their students and can put together plans to help them read at grade level. We require the state's Young Start program, which works with child care providers, to include a new focus on reading skills and new training in early childhood development. And we will implement a more rigorous licensure exam for elementary education programs patterned after the highly successful program in Massachusetts. And finally, we'll create a Read to Lead Development Council to raise support for reading programs all across Wisconsin. A study last April showed that students are 4 times more likely to drop out of school if they're not reading at grade level by the time they leave 3rd grade. And they're 13 times more likely if you include poverty as an additional factor. It is our duty to help all of our kids learn to read early so they don't ever have to feel that learning isn't for them. Now, together, our most ambitious goal is developing a uniquely Wisconsin school and school district accountability plan. Dr. Evers and I have been working with a diverse group of individuals to develop a plan to let parents, teachers, and communities know which schools are performing well so we can replicate their success. And also, we need to know which schools are failing so we can help them. Ultimately, educators, parents, and even employers will be able to look at the scores of schools and school districts all across the state. Every school that receives public funds, be it a traditional public school, a charter school, or even a choice school, every school will be rated by a fair, objective, and transparent system. We are proud of the work done by this design team, and I want to again thank Dr. Evers and his staff for their incredible leadership and collaboration on this important project. Thank you. Tonight, I've discussed our challenges, our progress, and our vision for success as we seek to create a climate for more jobs, a fiscally sound state government, and an education system that works well for all of our children. Now I'm asking each of you in all parts of Wisconsin to help us move our state forward. Over the last year, we demonstrated our commitment to improve the climate for business here in Wisconsin. Tonight, I'm asking small business owners from across the state to consider hiring at least one more employee in the coming year. Imagine how many more people we could get working if we all pitched in together. To continue to improve our fiscal standing so our kids inherit a state without massive deficits, I ask each of you to share your ideas for how we can eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse at our website, bestpractices.wi.gov. Imagine how much better we could make our government work if we share good ideas and suggestions. And to improve the educational opportunities for all of our kids, I'm asking each of you to join with me and people all across the state and become a reading mentor. Now, last week I started reading with a third grader in Milwaukee. I read to her about science and the marine life underwater. She read to me out of her book about the adventures of Edgar and Ellen. And then we did a reading exercise in the computer. I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun. And I was both impressed and inspired. Imagine how many kids we could inspire to be great leaders if we were all reach out to our local schools. Closing, let me leave you with one final thought. Years ago, when I had the honor of serving the good people of Wauwatosa in this chamber, I learned a valuable lesson. Don't personalize your differences. Over the years, I passed that on to many others with the simple reminder that your opponent today may be your ally tomorrow. The people I've met traveling the state over the past year seem to reflect that simple concept of respect for their fellow citizen. Respect for their fellow citizen. Sure, there are plenty of people with plenty of different opinions on politics, on business, on religion, on sports, on just about anything in the state. But what I've found in most parts, at least in most parts of the state, is a sense of respect. Most of the people I've met in this state care not only for their family and friends, but for the well-being of their neighbors and of their fellow citizens. That's the spirit of Wisconsin. I've seen it in the faces of the volunteers who show up to help after tornadoes in places like Merrill or La Crosse or Marinette. And I've always seen it in the faces of our men and women in uniform, like those we met earlier tonight from the 724th. Moving forward, I believe that spirit of Wisconsin will help us improve the state of our economy, the state of our budget, the state of our schools, and most importantly, I believe the spirit of Wisconsin will help us all improve the lives of each and every citizen in our great state. Now is the time for action. Now is the time to get our state working again. Now is the time to move Wisconsin forward.
The representative of the 69th District is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I move the Assembly stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, January 26th.
The representative from the 69th Isle moves that the joint convention arise. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. We're adjourned.